What is the unifying force? We've been talking about the nature of the force in Star Wars. This is part of a larger series. We've dove into the broad aspect and we've gone into the living force, the cosmic force, and now we are on the unifying force. If you want to know what aspect of the force is it that binds everything together, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to a special 4th of May Star Wars and Philosophy episode. And in fact, I'm hoping that I can crank out a few more today just because it is May the 4th be with you. And so Star Wars, and it's also a Friday, so Force Friday. And so we got all cylinders firing here. And so welcome. We are Star Wars and Philosophy, and you can see right up here what we do throughout the week here on YouTube, and also where you can connect to us on social media. I do have a giveaway. I wrote a book called Sharing Jesus with the Cults, available on Amazon, and I'm giving away a free copy of that. If that interests you at all, hit the description down below. You'll find all the links on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and also signing up for the mailing list and ways that you can enter. Next Wednesday is when the winner is going to be announced. Good luck with that. And of course, subscribe right here. This watermark you can hit any time during the video. And of course, the descriptions down below. I want to hear what you have to say. What is your view on the Force and on the unifying force? And so let's go ahead and jump right in. And we have a quote from Sabla-Mandibu: "The unifying force binds the stars and planets in space and time. Through this force, a Jedi can sense the past and the future." So what we found when we did our broad study of the Force is technically, in canon, you have the living force and the cosmic force. And the Force is a lot smaller in canon than it is in Legends. And so this aspect of the unifying force, as well as next week with the physical force, those are technically areas that have been explored mostly in Legends. But what we found is as they describe it, they describe events in canon and characters in canon and show us that this is there, but it's not like officially there. And so there was a novel called The Unifying Force, if you want to dive more into that whole area. But the unifying force was a view of the Force accepted by a minority of Jedi throughout the ages. And so one of the things we talked about is that in canon, the Force is the Force, of course, okay? So it's one Force, and so there's different aspects of the Force, and that's what we're talking about here. But everything is together, whereas in Legends, because the Force is much bigger, then you have different areas of the Force that you would kind of major in, like you're getting a degree, specialization. And so we're going to talk about if somebody majored in the view or the aspect of the unifying force, what would that look like in Star Wars? And so it was a minority view, okay? A lot of them focused on the living force, maybe even the cosmic force, but the unifying force was thought to be present in all shining stars, surrounding and penetrating them, thus making all universal things connected by it. And so what you need to know is that unifying force is kind of representative in a smaller view, space-time. Okay, it's the space-time aspect of the Force. So it's the thing that represents the reach of the Force to all the galaxies that are out there, and throughout time. Time is going to be an important facet of this. But I hear in this, and when we're talking about the galaxy and the stars in relation to the Force, there is, of course, in canon, in Rogue One, my favorite character, Chirrut, Jyn Erso, she's walking through, and he says, do you know what that is you're wearing? What do you know about kyber crystals? And she gets her attention because, of course, her father gave that to her. And he says, the brightest stars are said to have parts that give off kyber. And so you would have this connection between the stars and this vehicle that becomes the tool made into a lightsaber that powered the Death Star, and you have all of this. So you have this connection between the Unifying Force and the living force. But the other thing is that I just, in general, as I was reading about this, I was thinking that Chariot seemed like he was tapping into what I would think would be more the unifying force. It was, it's not good or bad. It just is, and we're going to get into that in a second, okay? So the Jedi believed the unifying force relied on their understandings and were attuned to space around them. So we talked about in the living force how Qui-Gon Jinn is kind of the quintessential model of the living force, and how he's always stopping, meditating, always present, always coaching Obi-Wan, be present and mindful of what's in front of you and around you. But here, Yoda, at least in the prequel era, is kind of the model for the unifying force. Because in the prequels, what you see is Yoda, and he's having all of these, visions. He's mindful of the prophecies. And so the unifying force is taken into account like the big picture. So Yoda in the prequels, and what they pointed out is, most of these people pointed out, and I'll have all the articles kind of linked, and you can kind of check them out and what they're saying. But Yoda in the prequels is different than the Yoda in the original trilogy. And when he's training Luke, he's very much a proponent of the living force. But I still think that there's aspects of the unifying force. And I think that when he's talking about, how it binds us and surrounds us and all of those things, I think that's talking about the unifying force more than it is the living force. It's maybe a combination or a connection between the two, or maybe, like I said, because in canon, it's just like the Force is the Force, and all these aspects are kind of intertwined, and they talk about them all at once. And so it's not the specialization that you have in the Legends material. But on the dark side of the Force, you have Sidious. And they said that's kind of ironic, because one of the things they brought out is that the Jedi of the prequel eras, and, of course, a lot of people didn't like this about The Last Jedi, but Luke is talking about how in their prime, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise to power and basically wipe out the Jedi, take over the Empire, create the Empire, and you have the Sith that are running the galaxy, and that is until, balance is brought and, Vader turns and Sidious is destroyed, kind of thing. And he brings that out, and that an aspect of what happened with the Jedi is that they became focused so much on the future and, the big picture, that they didn't see what was right in front of them. But ironically, it was the mastermind of the Sith, Sidious, who always had his mind on the future. And in fact, I believe he was the one who was creating the visions and the dreams that, turned Anakin to the dark side. And in fact, I believe he was the one that actually took life from Padme and used it to keep Anakin alive as Darth Vader. But that's a subject, for another day. So you have Yoda in the prequels, you have Sidious on the dark side as the masterminds that really tap into the unifying force. And so the unifying force, it unifies not just space and time, which that creates the whole thing of prophecies and visions and things like that, because you're either learning from the past or you're focusing in on the future, and you see this as all one big collective picture versus and so it unifies time, unifies space, but it also seems like it unifies the light and the dark side, because there is just one, force. And so you have the light side and the dark side. And one article I was looking at actually proposed this. The unifying force is considered to be the force in its purest form, the highest of its aspects, and the most powerful of its manifestations. Studying and understanding the unifying force would allow the user to attain a higher state of consciousness, transcending the physical realm completely and attaining a godlike status, becoming one of many entities who live in the force and guide it forward. And then another source was talking about how we understand that there is an innate balance to the force, and that the force itself strives towards this balance, and as any other organism would. And so because you have light and dark, and they both exist in the force, the unifying force is not just unifying time, not just unifying space, but it's actually unifying, it's seeking to unify the light and the dark and bring balance. And so that also seems to suggest that balance is supposed to be, or at least it's headed in the direction of not the ratification of one or the other, which the Jedi always want to get rid of the Sith always want to get rid of the Jedi, but rather that both the light and the dark sides are equally valuable and need to exist within the Star Wars universe in order for there to be balance. So then the question is, how do they achieve that balance? And they've got to get going and hurry, because in episode 9, they really need to bring closure to this story. They need to bring closure to the new trilogy. They need to bring closure to the all three trilogies, the Skywalker story. All of it. It needs to bring closer. And they say the war to end all wars. What does that look like? I feel like I need to do another video again on what does it mean for them to bring closure to this original trilogy. But so I want to know what your questions are about the unifying force. What are your thoughts about the unifying force? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? And what are you looking forward to most as we head into the future? We got Solo coming up. We've got Resistance, TV series. We got the Live for action TV series coming up. We've got episode 9 in production. What are you most excited about in the Star Wars universe? I want to know what your answer to that is. So give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Next week, next Friday, come on back. We're going to be talking about the physical force. And of course, like I said, I'm going to try and upload some more videos because it is May the 4th and I got some cool ideas. It's just a matter of time of whether or not I'm going to be able to pull them off. So until next time, may His power be with you.